Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Jeff Nichol. I'm a veterinarian and I'm residency trained and credentialed in veterinary behavior medicine with long experience in general practice. And this is really has always been my first love, is to help pets who are struggling, and they're people too. We all have this wonderful uh, perspective on Christmas. It's that most joyful time of the year, but not necessarily for everybody, is it? When my children were small, I used to read this book to them in December prior to Christmas, and it was called Corduroy's Christmas. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but it was this little teddy bear, and starts out with how much he loves Christmas because there's so many things to do, and he decorates his tree and he makes the Christmas cookies. Well, the truth is that all that stress doesn't work for everybody. And not only are there some people who actually struggle rather badly with Christmas time, but there are pets as well. And the reason is not because they feel they have all this stuff that they have to get done by the big day, but the problem with them is that they are struggling with anxiety problems. And if their lives are pretty much um, same one day to the next, predictable, they can do okay. But Christmas is a lot of change. And here's what we need to be looking for, and here's what I'm going to present to you in the next 30 minutes, is the way our dogs relate to us as their leaders. They're not little people in furry suits. We love them that way, and that's good for everybody. But in reality, they look to us for leadership. And people sometimes say, well, my dog can sense my feelings. Actually, they don't sense our feelings. They read us like a book. They watch us and they pick up on our most subtle body language signals, and they don't miss anything, especially a dog who's got some underlying anxieties that you may not be aware of on a day-to-day basis because dog's pretty well adjusted. But when they start to recognize that we're carrying some stress, they start to copy our emotional state. And that's because we're their leaders. And yeah, you can take big tummy breaths and start to relax for the well being of your pets. And that's a wonderful idea. But we want you to understand how to recognize the stress in your pet so you don't stumble into a problem and frankly have a disaster because the pet got overwhelmed by guests and children and other people in your home. Okay. So one of the things that we're going to talk about doing is gathering some intelligence. In other words, we're going to learn what your dog's thinking and what their emotional state is so that we can prevent problems, set them up for success. And at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about a wonderful device that reduces anxiety long-term in dogs who struggle with it. So here's a dog named Ellie, and you can say, look, she's rolling on her back. She wants a tummy rub. Look at her eyes. Do you notice that her pupils are a little bit dilated? This dog is in a conflicted emotional state. On one hand, she's very social and wants that interaction with her people, but she's nervous, and that's why the adrenaline's running and her pupils are dilated. So there are dogs who freak out and bite, and it sometimes comes as a total surprise. In my behavior practice, and after I finished my residency 5 years ago, that's all I do. But of course, the brain, where all behavior originates, is influenced by other organ systems. But in the brain, there can be multiple things going on at once, like you can see with Ellie's posture and her dilated pupils. And pets who are worried, who are waiting for that other shoe to fall, who are nervous about what might be lurking around that next corner, that's anxiety. And when those changes around Christmas start to occur, the general level of anxiety can start to build. Okay. And then there can be a trigger that can cause these pets to freak out and become defensive aggressive. And when it happens to people, especially around the holidays in their homes, it's a complete surprise. They say, my goodness, it came out of nowhere. But if they understood what to look for, then they could take preventive measures. Instead of reacting to a pet who starts to growl or snap or lunge, or worse, we set them up for success in advance. And of course, there are other disasters that they can get into as well, what we gently call dietary indiscretion, which can mean raiding the trash or counter surfing or getting into, the turkey bones, those thin-walled poultry bones that they crunch up in their mouth and they swallow these shards of bone that I have fished some of those out of intestines surgically. We don't want that, okay? And of course, there's chocolate, right? And chocolate is a huge poison disaster. I will mention it very briefly, but if your dog gets into chocolate, don't say, well, let's wait and see if we have a problem, because by the time you notice the trembling, potentially seizures, heart problems that you may not recognize, it can be too late to turn those around. So if a pet gets into chocolate, a dog, cats don't have that level of indiscretion, then you better take that pet to the emergency hospital ASAP. So here's a little dog named Molly, and this was taken in my exam room, but you can see that she shows indicators of stress. Well, she's at the doctor's office, but she's following her parent all over the room. She can't hold still. And this is a dog who is pretty nervous. So what if you see that at home? What if your dog you start getting busy and, the furniture changes, right? You have a Christmas tree, you have people calling. Those kinds of things can start to cause these sorts of indicators. Here's a little dog named Angie. Again, obviously in my exam room, but here's Angie being a denning creature that dogs are. And when they're in a potentially stressful situation, whoops, sorry, I was trying to start the video. Whoops, I'm sorry about that. Hold on here. There, whoops. All right, Angie, there you go. You notice her scanning and looking around. Her eyes are going back and forth, and she is wants to be near her person. If her person moves around, she's right with her, and she's under that chair because she's a denning creature. Now, would anybody have any business reaching under there to pet her or to hug her or to try to get hold of her collar and sort of pull her out of there? Well, that dog could freak out. Would she become defensive aggressive and bite? Maybe. It happens. Okay. So we let those dogs alone. Okay. So if we have a concern about fear, about a smoldering anxiety, we need to avoid those problems. We do not react, and we don't let that dog growl and snap and then come down and reprimand or punish. Because if these things are driven by fear and anxiety, you're punishing an emotional state, and of course, they only get worse. We know how to set them up for success, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, so avoidance. If you have nervous dogs and you've got children nearby, we don't mix those. Kids love pets. And you would think, well, I'll hold my pet. I'll hold this dog firmly in my lap and I'll let the kids pet them. We're going to show a little video about how dogs can become highly stressed that way, even if they don't bite. We just haven't done the right thing for the pet. So we don't gamble. We prevent that stuff. Here's a study done by Dr. Ilana Reisner. I credited her at the bottom of the slide. And she is a member of the Veterinary Behavior College who has done extensive research, not just in this area, but she's considered the authority on this. And this was a study done at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. You can see it was a pretty good sized study. These were all children who came to the hospital with bites. These weren't children who somebody's dog lunged at them. These are children who didn't just get a minor wound. These kids had significant wounds, some of them disfiguring, and they were in the hospital. And a little over half of them were little kids, okay? They do dumb things, right? I did when I was a kid. And you can see the great majority of them, these dogs were not strangers to them. They knew them. Sometimes they were the family's own pet. Sometimes they were visiting another family and they knew the dog already. And so the takeaway here is that the parents, the adults, assumed that things would be okay. This dog has met this child. Shouldn't be a problem. Great majority of the case, it was a very big problem. Okay. And these were what are considered positive interactions initiated by the child. When I was 4 years old, I was visiting family friends with my folks and my older sister, and they had a young boy about the age of my sister and myself, and then they had this wonderful little Boston Terrier. At least I thought he was wonderful. And they were playing cards. The parents were at the card table, and that little dog was under the table. You remember? Just like this little guy. And I reached under there because I wanted to hug and kiss that dog because I love dogs and I didn't have one. And that dog bit me on the cheek. Was not a disfiguring wound, but the parents, of course, all came unglued. What do we do with this dog? When in fact, had they known what the heck was going on, had they understood the dog's body signaling. Now here's some video monitoring of this little guy. His name's Howie. And he doesn't do anything real bizarre, but look at the way he's moving slowly, panting nervously. If you look at his eyes, they're dilated. His ears are back. This little guy is not a happy camper, okay? And you can hear his owner's voice. She's talking, all right? This is a guy who's having a bad time. Here's a video shot. These folks were away at work. And this is a dog. Well, I'm not going to tell you what bad behavior he gets into when he's home alone, but if you look very carefully, you can see the little fuzzy white guy near the window. And if you look on the couch, you might miss it altogether. Is this big old Great Dane who's actually behaving quite normally because he's relaxed. He's okay with his people being away. Okay. So anyway, this little fellow's name is Leaf. He walks around looking back and forth, a little bit nervously, tails up though, doesn't look too bad. And now look what happens. He never did this when the people were at home. They came home to find the urine soiling. This dog has separation anxiety, and you would expect that he'd be just jumping at the door. Some of them do. Jumping at the window, tearing down the drapes. Some of them do. Barking continuously and bothering the neighbors. Often the case. Not always. This little guy manifested with urine soiling. Well, how are we going to find this stuff out? Well, I explained to these folks that if we could see what Leaf was doing while they were gone, we would have a sense of what we're dealing with. You think, what's this got to do with Christmas? Because if you have a nervous dog that you can recognize on video, or just is walking around following you, just can't keep its eyes off you as you are doing somewhat different things around your house, maybe preparing for Christmas, you say, maybe this dog could react fearfully if some well-meaning child or even adult wants to interact and approaches, and the dog might even be hiding out. Well, here's the issue with these things. Many of these dogs, you put them in the other room, so they're out of harm's way, and every child and well-meaning adult who doesn't know any better is out of harm's way because your dog might react. And you put a little video monitor camera in that other room, like a Nest Cam, or you can take your smartphone and prop it up against a couple of books or get an inexpensive tabletop tripod that you can get on the internet for 15 or 20 bucks, where you can find out what the heck the dog is doing. You might even be in the other part of the house, but you are gathering intelligence, okay? So here's a dog. His name is Smokey, and this was a video monitoring done with the people away from home. Smokey is one highly distressed dog. And there are dogs who behave like that or like Leaf in the house, knowing that their people are there, but in a different part of the house. And if you have that kind of separation related behavior while you're at home or while you're gone, you need to know. Now, take a look at this little guy. Here's a person leaning over him. He's not trapped under a den-like enclosure like a dog crate or under a card table, but he's a nervous guy who loves his person. Conflicting emotional states. There's this person thinking he's doing something good. You notice the nervous lip licking? Notice the dilated pupils, ears are kind of retracted. He looking at this person, wants to be near his person, but nervous all at the same time because the person he loves and trusts continues to unintentionally intimidate him by leaning over him and continuing to pet him. And the dog goes, oh my goodness, I love you, but would you stop scaring the daylights out of me? So the person stands up, oh, bends over, the dog's ears go back, gets nervous. He goes, oh my goodness, can I just get a break here? Okay, now we're going some other place and the dog's happy. That person believed that maybe he was getting a dog accustomed to that kind of handling, but we are much, much bigger than dogs. We're even bigger than big dogs, unless you're a little kid. And all that leaning over and reaching down, that makes them nervous. And you remember Angie at the beginning, or Ellie, I'm sorry, we'll see her again. Okay, there she is. So kids don't listen, do they? Well, they say they're going to listen, but they don't. Okay, I don't care how wonderful a dog's history is with children, they should never be trusted, especially when there's a whole lot of commotion going on. Children and pets always must be supervised by an adult, which interestingly, other statistics we've learned with studies done of children with getting bites, about 55% of them, by the way, an adult was present and believed they were supervising. But what they didn't recognize was how to interpret the nervousness in these dogs that they were watching. I often suggest that when you have a dog you think is probably pretty good with kids and you're going to supervise carefully, leave a leash attached to the dog's collar and then snap the handle of the leash into one of these little lightweight carabiners that you get at the check stand at the supermarket or the pharmacy, whatever. People use them to hang keys from their belt. Well, put that on your belt and snap the handle of the leash in it. Your dog can be tethered to you. You'll have more control. Okay. Avoid the stress. Stress is not an anxious dog's friend. Okay. And when in doubt, just keep them securely away from the kids. So here's Ellie, and watch what happens when somebody reaches for her. Ears go back. Oh, take a treat. Nervous licking. Well, that's not a happy dog, is it? And it can be triggered awfully easily. Don't do that. Okay. We knew that dog's emotional state before that person leaned over and reached their hand. So yeah, they can panic and it can go badly. So in behavior medicine, we see multiple different issues sometimes going on at the same time in the same pet. And this slide, of course, was made relating to separation anxiety, but you can see the full third of dogs who have separation anxiety are also afraid of strangers. And many dogs who have fear of unfamiliar people will run and hide and cower, and people can reach and grab them and they don't get bitten. But how does that help the well-being of the pet? Well, it doesn't, of course, and they only get more afraid. So if we love pets, we're going to be empathic toward them and say, look, I wouldn't want to be treated like that either. So here's a dog who had issues with being separated from its person. And what we did with this dog was we put it in another room and we preempted the whole problem. We made sure this dog was comfortable in its usual sleeping room, and we gave her food toys. Her name is Lulu, and I'll show you a little video of her enjoying her food toy in just a second. But if you've got your dog in a different room and you have your family for Christmas, for example, you can play music that is developed to foster what are called alpha waves in the dog's brain. This is music that is scientifically developed to synchronize with those normal alpha waves, and those have a calming effect. And it's called Through a Dog's Ear. And you can go to the internet and order it. You can download it onto your computer, or they can mail you a CD and you can play it in your stereo. You can use an old-fashioned noisy fan to drown out the sounds in other parts of the house so that your dog just doesn't get quite so nervous because it really can't hear what's going on. And if you use a wire crate, cover it so it's more like a den. Throw a sheet or a towel over it, but leave the door open because when they get trapped, they can get more fearful. So here's Lulu, and she's enjoying a loaded food toy while her person is elsewhere. And she's pushing, there's lots of different kinds of food toys. You can Google food toys for dogs, but this is one in particular that she has taught herself that if she pushes it around every now and then, a little bit of piece of dog kibble comes out. And to food motivate Lulu, the nervous dog, we don't feed her prior to her owner being away from her. So she's motivated, okay? So here's this wonderful device. You can see it on this little golden retriever in the lower corner here. And this is something that uses a pulse electromagnetic field to reduce anxiety by targeting the fear center of the brain, the amygdala, back of the head. And it's effective against separation anxiety, but we have found it very helpful for other manifestations for anxiety, including nervous pets when people are visiting, okay? It's non-prescription, the dog feels nothing, totally safe, and it's effective. We use these for long-term between now and Christmas. It takes about a 4 to 6 week treatment course for these things to start working. The dog wears it twice a day. You can see down at the bottom with this Irish setter, we have this little thing called a vest, this fabric thing with Velcro closures, and you stick this little lightweight halo-shaped device. It's the thing that's in this person's hand that puts out that little electromagnetic field, and it makes adjustments in the microglia, the little functional nerve cells in the fear center of the dog's brain. And these things, it's the only thing I know of in medicine that's actually guaranteed. If it doesn't work for you, you can send it back to a CZ Animal Health. They'll refund your money. You don't need the vest, by the way. You can see that small breed dog in the upper left corner. Person's just holding it. So here are the real takeaways. This is the kind of thing that you can get through the holidays with your nervous pet. Understand who you're dealing with. You may know this dog and love her deeply, and it comes back to us in spades with our pets, doesn't it? But understand what the dog's challenges are. What are the issues that we need to know? Anxiety, get some video. Video while you're away from home and video while you are at home. And don't assume that children understand that they don't know nothing. Because they don't, and they're sure that they're smarter than we are. Well, they don't. So don't take their word for it. Don't say, oh, this is a very gentle child. We're going to let this child enjoy this dog because it might help our dog become more relaxed around children. Don't do that. It won't work. Okay. So here is this little dog. You can just see her playing. Her name is Sufi, and she's just this wonderful dog having a nice time. And she's just enjoying that. And here she is with her Calmer Canine device.